come along with me as I bake my favorite recipe for soft, chewy, delicious sourdough bread from start to finish. Enjoy! I just pulled my sourdough starter out of the refrigerator, and this is what it looks like. And I have too much, so I need to discard some. So I'm just going to dump some of that out into the garbage before I feed it. I do not measure how much I throw away. I just kind of eyeball it and think, okay, that's enough. And now I will feed the remaining sourdough starter. And the way I do it is, so what I have ready is a spoon and a cup of fresh water, just straight from the fridge, and some all-purpose flour. So I tear my scale so that and I use grams, and then I'll add 113 grams of all-purpose flour, and I actually usually just spoon this in. And I am precise about this. Once I hit 113, I tear it again and add the same amount of water in grams. And now I just stir everything together until there is no dry flour remaining. Toss this in the sink. And that's it. It's fed. I cover it back up with the lid, and I'll leave this on the counter for a few hours, for a handful of hours before I use it to make my bread. And so I kind of take note about the level of the sourdough starter in here. I'm looking for it to puff up and expand. I want it to be really bubbly and happy and active before I use it to make bread. Okay, so it has been about 7 hours since I fed my sourdough starter, and it has puffed up and gotten really nice and bubbly and active. It's ready to use to make bread. So I'm going to turn on my scale, and in my bowl I'm going to add 120 grams of sourdough starter. Now I'm making 2 loaves of bread, so if you only want to make one, do half. And I almost always go over by a couple of grams, which is fine. And then I add 1,080 grams of flour. I do a combination of all-purpose flour and bread flour. I just try to do about half of each. But I'm not a stickler on that, so a little bit more all-purpose flour this time than bread flour. Alright, and then I add 3 cups of warm water and 18 grams of salt. That's all the ingredients. So now I just mix it up with my Danish dough whisk. I'm kind of trying to turn the dough over and get the wet spots to pick up the dry bits at the bottom. And I keep doing this until there is no dry flour left, or until it looks something like this. Then I'll scrape the dough hook off, and I'll cover this with plastic wrap for 30 minutes. This is what the sourdough starter looks like when I'm using it. See those big bubbles? It's at this point when I cover it and put it back in the refrigerator, and it just stays in there until next week when I'm ready to bake again. All right, it's been 30 minutes, so it's time to do a stretch and fold. So I pull the edge of the dough out and then fold it on itself. Turn it a little bit, do the same. I just go all the way around doing that. Right, and now I will cover it back up with the plastic and let it do its bulk rise. So I have planned it so that it's now my bedtime, so I will leave this overnight, and then tomorrow we'll do the shaping of the loaf and finish the bread. But this way it gives a long time for it to do its bulk rise while I'm asleep. It has been several hours overnight and all through my part-time workday, and my dough has risen a lot. So the bread is ready to shape and do its second rise. So I will peel back the plastic, and I will use some all-purpose flour to prepare the bench or the counter. And I will also use the flour to flour the inside of these bowls, which I will line with some kitchen towels. I understand that there is such a thing as, I think it's called a banneton, or a special sourdough raising basket or something. I don't have those. I just use a bowl lined with a towel, and then I sprinkle flour liberally on the inside of the towel. And that's where I will place my shaped loaf for it to do its second rise. Okay, now I'm going to shape the bread dough, scraping it out with my hand. I like to get as much of the dough out as I can. All right. Now I like to do I like to bake 2 loaves of bread at once, so I'm going to divide this lump of dough into 2. I just eyeball it. Okay, now in order to shape the dough into a loaf, we do a stretch and fold action again. So I'm going to pull it from the center and fold it over itself. Rotate it a little bit, pull and fold, stretch and fold. This is making the dough into the correct shape for a loaf, and it also gives it some strength so that it will keep its correct shape. And I'm kind of pinching all of these ends together in the middle after folding it, and it makes a nice round loaf. I'm going to plop it right into my lined bowl, top side down, and shape this one. Just trying to make it into a round shape after having stretched and pulled it so that it's even. Now I'm going to plop it face down or top down into the bowl. And then I just fold over the tops of the towel, and I'll just put that aside on the counter for 30 minutes to 2 hours. It just depends on the temperature in the kitchen, how much time I have. So I'll be back in a while and see if these have puffed up nicely, and then we'll pop them in the oven. Okay, it's been about 2 hours and it's time for me to put our bread in the oven. You can see that it has risen quite a bit, so it's puffing up and it looks ready to go. I have 2 Dutch oven pots or cast iron pots with lids, which is what I use to bake the bread in. So, and I have 2 sheets of parchment paper, 2 squares of parchment paper. So I'll put the parchment on top and invert the bowl. And then carefully peel back the cloth. Okay, to score the top of the loaf, you can either use a bread lamb like this or a sharp knife, it doesn't matter. And I'm just gonna slice, I do an X across the top. This allows for more even expansion in the oven. And then I'll just place that carefully into my pot and cover it with the lid. And now I'll do that with my second loaf. And then I'll show you how I score the top of that. It has been an hour. The bread is baked. I've just taken them out of the oven. So here's our first loaf. And by the way, I left the lids on the pots the entire time. And there's loaf 2. There you are. That's the complete process. And just a note, it has been over 27 hours since I started this process, since I started with feeding the sourdough starter yesterday through the process till now on the completion of the bread. So that time is shortened by a lot in the summer months. It depends a lot on the temperature in the kitchen, and it being January, it can take a lot longer for the loaves to for the dough to rise and things like that. So anyway, there you have it.